Amy Carter woke up with a sharp pain in her head. The cold metal floor beneath her felt wrong. This was not her bed on the ship. This was not her room. She tried to remember what happened, but her mind felt fuzzy. She opened her eyes slowly. The ceiling above her was made of dark metal with strange symbols carved into it. Blue lights ran along the edges, casting weird shadows on the walls. The air smelled different, too. It had a metallic taste that made her want to cough. Amy sat up and looked around. She was in a small room with walls that seemed to glow with a faint light. There was no door that she could see, no windows. Just smooth walls that met at perfect corners. The floor was the same dark metal as the ceiling. Her uniform was torn in several places. There was dried blood on her sleeve, but she could not remember getting hurt. She touched her head where the pain was worst and felt a small cut. It was already healing. The last thing she remembered was being on patrol with her team. They were checking a strange signal near the edge of human space. Lieutenant Amy Carter of the United Earthship Horizon had been doing routine patrols for 2 years. Nothing exciting ever happened out there. Until today, she remembered the signal getting stronger. Then her ship's alarms started going off. Something big was coming toward them. Something that did not show up on their sensors until it was too late. Amy stood up and walked to one of the walls. She pressed her hand against it. It felt warm and seemed to pulse slightly like it was alive. She pushed harder, but the wall did not move. She tried hitting it with her fist, but it just made a dull sound. A section of the wall suddenly became clear like glass. Amy jumped back. Through the clear section, she could see a long hallway filled with the same blue light. Strange creatures walked back and forth in the hallway. They were tall and thin, with 4 arms and skin that looked like it was made of dark green metal. Their heads were long and narrow, with big black eyes that took up most of their faces. One of the creatures stopped in front of her wall and looked at her. Its mouth opened, showing rows of small, sharp teeth. It made a sound like clicking mixed with buzzing. Amy could not understand what it was saying, but it did not sound friendly. The creature walked away, and more of them came to look at her. They all made the same clicking and buzzing sounds. Some of them held small devices that they pointed at her. The devices made soft beeping sounds. Amy backed away from the wall. She was definitely not on Earth anymore. She was not even on a human ship. These creatures had captured her somehow. But what had happened to her team? What had happened to the horizon? She tried to remember more, but her head still hurt. There had been a fight. She remembered explosions and people shouting. Then everything went dark. The wall became solid again, blocking her view of the hallway. Amy was alone in the small room. She looked around for anything that might help her escape, but there was nothing. No tools, no weapons, no way out. She sat down on the floor and tried to think. She was a military officer. She had been trained for situations like this. Well, not exactly like this. Her training had been about fighting other humans, not strange alien creatures, but the basics were the same. Stay calm, look for opportunities, and never give up. Hours passed. Amy had no way to tell time in the room. The blue lights never got brighter or dimmer. There were no sounds except for the soft humming that seemed to come from the walls themselves. She did push-ups and sit-ups to keep her body strong. She went over everything she remembered about her capture, looking for clues. She tried to make plans for escape, but without knowing where she was or what these creatures wanted. It was hard to plan anything. The wall became clear again. This time, one of the creatures came into her room. Amy had not seen it open, but suddenly there was a doorway and the creature walked through. The creature was even taller than she had thought. It had to bend down to fit through the opening. The creature made more clicking and buzzing sounds. Then it held up a small device and pressed something on it. Suddenly, Amy could understand what it was saying. "You are the human," the creature said. Its voice sounded like metal scraping against metal. "You are smaller than we expected." "Where am I?" Amy asked. "What did you do with my crew?" "You are on a ship of the Zephyrian Empire. Your crew fought bravely before they died? You were the only one who survived." Amy felt like someone had punched her in the stomach. Her crew was dead. Jake, who always made jokes during the boring parts of patrol. Lisa, who kept pictures of her family on her desk. Captain Brown, who had been like a father to her. All dead. Why did you keep me alive? Amy asked. Her voice was steady, but inside she was screaming. You interest us, the creature said. Humans are new to space. We have heard stories, but we have never studied one before. You will help us learn about your species. I won't tell you anything. The creature made a sound that might have been laughter. You will not need to tell us anything. We will observe you. We will see how you behave when you are afraid. How you react to danger. How long you survive. Survive what? We have a special place for creatures like you. A place where we can watch and learn. You will be put with other specimens. Some are predators. Some are prey. We will see which one you are. Amy's blood went cold. They were going to throw her into some kind of arena with dangerous animals. She was going to be entertainment for these creatures. The other specimens have been in the arena for many cycles, the creature continued. They are strong. They are fast. They are dangerous. Most new specimens do not last long. And if I refuse, you cannot refuse? You are already our specimen. Tomorrow you will be moved to the arena. Tonight you rest, eat, prepare yourself. A section of the wall opened and a tray of food appeared. The food looked strange, but it smelled okay. Amy was hungry, but she did not want to eat anything these creatures gave her. The food is safe, the creature said. We want you healthy. For the arena, dead specimens are not useful for study. The creature left the room. The wall became solid again. Amy was alone with her thoughts and the tray of alien food. She looked at the food. It was some kind of paste with small chunks of what might have been meat. There were also some round things that looked like fruit. Her stomach growled. She had not eaten since before the attack on her ship. Amy picked up one of the round things and took a small bite. It tasted sweet like an apple mixed with honey. She ate it slowly, then tried the paste. It was bland but not bad. She ate everything. On the tray, as she ate, she thought about what the creature had said. They were going to put her in an arena with dangerous creatures. They expected her to die quickly. They thought she was weak because she was human. Amy smiled for the first time since waking up. These creatures had made a mistake. They thought they knew what humans were capable of. They thought they could study her like a lab rat. They had no idea what they were dealing with. She was Lieutenant Amy Carter of the United Earth Space Force. She had been trained to fight, to survive, and to never give up. If these creatures wanted to see what a human could do when pushed to the limit, she would show them. She would survive their arena. She would find a way to escape. And then she would make them pay for what they had done to her crew. Amy lay down on the cold metal floor and closed her eyes. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but tonight she needed to rest. Tomorrow, she would begin to show these aliens why humans had earned their place among the stars. Amy woke up when the walls started making loud noises. The blue lights were flashing on and off, and she could hear the clicking sounds of the Zephyrian creatures outside her room. She sat up quickly, her heart beating fast. The wall became clear again, and 3 of the tall creatures stood outside. One of them was holding a long stick that sparked with electricity at the end. Another had a device that looked like a weapon pointed at her. Time to go, human, the first creature said through the translation device. The arena waits for you. Amy stood up slowly. She was not going to show these creatures that she was afraid, even though her stomach felt like it was full of ice. She walked to the wall and waited. The wall disappeared, creating an opening. The creatures motioned for her to walk forward. Amy stepped into the hallway. The ceiling was much higher than her room, and the walls stretched far in both directions. More blue lights ran along the floor and ceiling, making everything look cold and strange. They walked for a long time through many hallways. Amy tried to remember the way, counting turns and looking for anything that might help her later. The creatures did not talk as they walked. They just made soft clicking sounds to each other. They passed other rooms with clear walls. Inside some of them, Amy could see different creatures. In one room, there was something that looked like a giant spider with too many legs. In another, she saw a creature that seemed to be made of rocks and moved very slowly. Some rooms were empty except for strange stains on the walls. Amy tried not to think about what those stains might be. They came to a large door that was different from the others. It was made of thick metal and had symbols carved all over it. The creatures stopped walking and one of them pressed something on the wall. The door opened with a loud grinding sound. Beyond the door was the biggest room Amy had ever seen. The ceiling was so high she could barely see it. The walls curved around in a huge circle, and there were rows and rows of seats going up toward the ceiling. In those seats, hundreds of Zephyrian creatures sat watching. In the center of the room was a pit. The pit was about as big as a football field, with walls that went down at least 30 feet. The bottom was covered with sand and dirt, and there were big rocks scattered around. Amy could see bones mixed in with the sand. Some of the bones were very large. "Your new home," one of the creatures said. "Try to live longer than the last specimen." It died in less than one day. They pushed Amy toward the edge of the pit. She looked down and saw that there were already other creatures down there. One was huge, about 8 feet tall, with green scaly skin and long arms that ended in claws. It had a head like a lizard but stood on 2 legs like a person. The creature was looking up at her and making a low growling sound near the big lizard creature. There was something that looked like it came from the ocean. It had a round body with long tentacles that moved like snakes. The tentacles had suction cups on them, and Amy could see that some of the cups had sharp spikes. The creature's eyes were large and black, and they watched everything around it. In one corner of the pit, Amy saw something small and furry hiding behind a rock. It looked almost like a dog, but it had 6 legs and a tail that ended in something sharp. The creature was shaking and making whimpering sounds. There were other creatures, too, but they were in the shadows and Amy could not see them clearly. She counted at least 6 different animals in the pit. All of them looked dangerous. One of the Zephyrian creatures pushed Amy forward. "Go, join the others. The observation begins now." Amy was pushed to the edge of the pit. There was a platform that lowered down like an elevator. She had no choice but to step onto it. The platform started going down slowly. As she got closer to the bottom, the creatures in the pit started making different sounds. The big lizard creature roared and hit the ground with its fists. The tentacle creature moved its arms in circles and made a sound like steam escaping. The small furry creature ran deeper into the shadows. The platform reached the bottom and Amy stepped off. The sand under her feet was soft and shifted when she walked. She could smell something bad, like rotting meat. The bones in the sand were from many different kinds of creatures. The big lizard creature walked toward her. Each step it took made the ground shake a little. When it got close, Amy could see its teeth. They were as long as her fingers and very sharp. The creature's eyes were yellow and looked at her like she was food. "Small human," the creature said. Amy was surprised it could talk. "You will not last long here. I am Grokthol, warrior of Kethmara. I have killed many creatures in this place." "I'm Amy," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "I don't want to fight you." Grokthol made a sound that might have been laughter. "You do not choose to fight or not fight. The masters make us fight. When they get bored, they make the arena dangerous. Plants come out of the walls. The ground shakes. Sometimes they drop weapons for us to use." The tentacled creature moved closer. When it spoke, its voice sounded like water bubbling. "I am Whisper of the Deep Seas. The Small One speaks truth. The masters want to see us fight. They want to see who is strongest." Amy looked around the pit. The walls were too high to climb, and they looked smooth. There were no obvious ways to escape. Above them, the Zephyrian creatures were watching and making notes on their devices. "How long have you been here?" Amy asked. "Many cycles," Grokthol said. "I have seen many creatures brought here. Most die quickly. Some last longer. None have ever left." "What happened to them?" The masters take them away when they stop being interesting. We do not see them again. Amy walked toward the center of the pit. She wanted to see the whole arena and understand what she was dealing with. The sand had different colors in different areas. In some spots it was dark red. In others it was almost black. She tried not to think about why there were holes in the walls at different heights. Some were small, others were large enough for a person to walk through. Amy guessed that was where the dangerous things came from that Grokthul had talked about. The plants, she said. Where do they come from? Whisper pointed one of its tentacles at the small holes. They grow fast from there. They grab and bite. They have poison that makes you sleep forever. Amy nodded. She was starting to understand how this place worked. The Zephyrians would watch them and take notes. When things got boring, they would make the arena more dangerous to see how the creatures reacted. She looked up at the watching aliens. They were all looking at her now. Some were making clicking sounds to each other. Others were writing on their devices. One of them was pointing at her and seemed to be explaining something to the others. They think you are weak, Grokthul said. They think you will die fast. Humans are new to the galaxy. The masters have heard stories, but they have never seen one before. What kind of stories? Stories of humans fighting wars. Stories of humans being hard to kill, but you are small. You have no claws, no poison, no thick skin. You look like prey to me, Amy smiled. Maybe that's what I want to look like. The big lizard creature stared at her. You are strange, human. Amy walked to one of the large rocks and sat down. She needed to think. She needed to watch and learn. The other creatures were dangerous, but they were also predictable. They acted like animals, using their size and strength to solve problems. Amy was different. She was human. She had been trained to think, to plan, to adapt. These creatures expected her to either fight or run. They expected her to be afraid. She was afraid. But fear could be useful if you knew how to use it. The small furry creature came out from behind its rock. It walked carefully toward Amy, staying far away from Grokthul and Whisper. When it got close, Amy could see that it was badly hurt. There were scratches on its sides and one of its legs was bleeding. Don't come too close, Amy said softly. I won't hurt you, but I don't know what you're capable of. The creature stopped and looked at her with big, sad eyes. It made a soft sound, almost like a cat purring. Then it lay down in the sand about 10 feet away from her. Above them, the Zephyrian creatures were getting excited. They were making more clicking sounds and pointing at Amy and the small creature. One of them pressed something on a device. Suddenly, the ground started to shake. The sand began to move and shift. From the holes in the walls, long green vines started growing. They grew fast, reaching across the pit like grabbing hands. The vines had thorns and what looked like mouths with teeth. The plants! Whisper shouted. They come now. Grokthul roared and grabbed a large bone from the sand. He swung it at the vines that came near him. Whisper wrapped its tentacles around a rock and pulled itself up higher. Amy looked around quickly. The vines were everywhere, but they moved in patterns. They grew toward movement and heat. The small furry creature was too hurt to move fast, and the vines were growing toward it. Without thinking, Amy ran toward the small creature. She grabbed it and rolled behind a large rock, just as a vine with thorns swept over where they had been. The creature was heavier than she expected, but she managed to pull it to safety. Stay still, she whispered to the creature. They track. Movement. The creature looked at her with surprise. It had probably never been helped by another prisoner before. Amy watched the vines from behind the rock. They were following a pattern, just like she thought. They grew for exactly 2 minutes. 3 days passed in the arena. Amy watched everything. She counted the time between when the dangerous plants came out. She watched where the Zephyrian creatures sat and what they did. She studied the other prisoners and learned their habits. The small furry creature stayed close to Amy now. She had saved it from the vines, and it seemed to trust her. Amy called it Pip because of the small sounds it made. Pip was smart and fast, but it was also scared of everything. Grokthul spent most of his time showing off his strength. He would roar and hit rocks with his fists. He would pick up bones and break them in half. The watching Zephyrians liked this, and made excited clicking sounds when he did it. Whisper stayed in the shadows most of the time. Its tentacles moved constantly, feeling the air and the ground. Amy noticed that Whisper was always ready to move, always watching for danger. The creature was much smarter than it looked. Amy did not try to show off like Grokthul. Instead, she sat quietly and watched. She picked up small pieces of metal and bone that were scattered in the sand. She hid them under rocks where the others could not see them. The arena had patterns. Amy was good at seeing patterns. The plants came out every day at the same time. The ground shook every few hours. Sometimes weapons would drop from the ceiling, simple things like metal rods or sharp rocks. When weapons dropped, Grokthul would rush to grab them. He would wave them around and roar. But Amy noticed something important. The weapons always disappeared after a few hours. They would just sink into the sand and vanish. The Zephyrians were not just watching them fight. They were testing them. They wanted to see how each creature reacted to different situations. They wanted to know who was smart and who was just strong. On the fourth day, something new happened. The wall on one side of the arena opened up, and another creature was pushed into the pit. This one was different from the others. It walked on four legs like a big cat, but it had metal plates covering its body. Its eyes glowed red, and when it breathed, steam came out of its mouth. "War beast," Grokthul said, backing away. "They are made for killing, very dangerous." The war beast looked around the arena. Its red eyes stopped on each prisoner for a moment. When it looked at Amy, she felt cold. This creature was not like the others. It had been designed to hunt and kill Dab above them. The Zephyrians were making more excited sounds. They were pointing at the war beast and then at the other prisoners. Amy realized they wanted to see a fight. They wanted to see who would win. The war beast started walking toward Pip. The small creature was the easiest target. Pip saw it coming and ran behind. Amy, making scared sounds. Amy stood up slowly. She picked up a piece of metal she had hidden and held it in her hand. The metal was sharp on one end and could be used as a weapon, but she did not want to fight the war beast. She wanted to understand it. The war beast stopped when Amy stood up. It looked at her with its glowing eyes. Amy could see that it was thinking, deciding what to do. This was not just a mindless killer, it was smart. "You protect the small one," the war beast said. Its voice sounded like rocks grinding together. "Why?" Amy was surprised it could talk. "Because it cannot protect itself. The weak die. That is the way of things." "Maybe, but not today." The war beast tilted its head. "You are human. I have heard of your kind. You fight wars with each other. You destroy your own world. You are violent. Some humans are violent. Some are not. I choose when to fight." "You choose?" The war beast seemed confused. "You do not fight because you must? You do not kill because it is your nature?" Amy shook her head. "I fight when I need to. I kill when I have to. But I do not do it for fun." The war beast looked at the other prisoners. Grokthul was ready to fight, holding a large bone like a club. Whisper had wrapped its tentacles around a rock and was ready to throw it, but Amy was just standing there, talking. "The masters want us to fight," the war beast said. "They want to see blood. I know, but we do not have to do what they want." Above them, the Zephyrians were getting impatient. They were making louder, clicking sounds and pointing at the prisoners. One of them pressed something on a device. The ground started to shake. The sand began to move and shift. From the holes in the walls, the green vines started growing again, but this time there were more of them. They grew faster and had bigger thorns. "The plants come," Whisper shouted. Grokthul roared and started swinging his bone club at the vines. The war beast jumped onto a rock to stay away from them. Whisper used its tentacles to climb up the wall. Amy looked around quickly. The vines were everywhere, but she had been watching them for days. She knew their patterns. She knew where they would grow and where they would not. "This way," she called to Pip. She ran toward a corner of the arena where the vines never grew. Pip followed her, running as fast as it could on its hurt leg, but the vines were different this time. They grew in new patterns. They reached places they had never reached before. Amy realized the Zephyrians had changed the rules because she had figured out the old ones. A vine with thorns swept toward Amy and Pip. Amy pushed Pip out of the way and rolled to the side. The vine missed her by inches. She got up and ran toward a different corner. But more vines were growing there too. The war beast jumped down from its rock and landed next to Amy. "This way," it said. "I know a safe place." Amy looked at the creature. It was offering to help her. She did not understand why, but she did not have time to think about it. She followed the war beast as it ran toward the center of the arena. The war beast led her to a spot where several large rocks were piled together. The rocks created a small cave that the vines could not reach. Amy and Pip crawled inside. The war beast squeezed in after them. "Why did you help me?" Amy asked. "You are not like the others," the war beast said. "You think before you act. You plan. You are not just an animal. Neither are you." The war beast looked at her with its glowing red eyes. "I was made to be a weapon. I was created to kill, but I do not want to kill you. You are interesting." Outside their small cave, the vines were still growing. They could hear Grokthul roaring as he fought them. They could hear Whisper making its bubbling sounds. "What is your name?" Amy asked the war beast. "I do not have a name. I'm just a weapon. Everyone should have a name. I will call you Steel. Is that okay?" The war beast thought about this. "Steel, yes, I like that." They waited in the cave until the vines stopped growing and went back into the walls. When it was safe, they came out. Grokthul was covered in cuts from the thorns, but he was still standing. Whisper was hanging from the wall, breathing hard. "You work together," Grokthul said, looking at Amy and Steel. "That is not usual here. Prisoners do not help each other." "Maybe that is why so many prisoners die," Amy said, got above them. The Zephyrians were making different sounds. They seemed confused. They were pointing at Amy and Steel and talking to each other in excited voices. Amy looked up at them. They had expected a fight to the death. Instead, they had seen cooperation. They had seen a human convince a war beast to help instead of kill. That night, when the arena was quiet, Amy sat with her back against a rock. Pip was sleeping next to her, and Steel was lying nearby. The war beast did not need much sleep, so it watched for danger. "Amy," Steel said quietly, "the masters are planning something. I can hear them talking when they think we are not listening." "What are they planning?" "They are going to bring something new. Something they have never used before." "They want to see what you will do," Amy nodded. She had expected this. The Zephyrians were not getting the results they wanted. They were going to make things more dangerous. "What kind of something?" she asked. "I do not know. But they are excited about it. They think it will solve their problem." Amy looked around the arena. She had been here for 4 days, and she had learned a lot. She had figured out the patterns of the plants and the timing of the dangers. She had made allies instead of enemies. She had shown the Zephyrians that humans did not act the way they expected, but she knew this was just the beginning. The real test was coming. The Zephyrians were going to bring something that would push all of them to their limits. Amy closed her eyes and started planning. She thought about everything she had learned. She thought about the strengths and weaknesses of each creature in the arena. She thought about the layout of the pit and the habits of their captors, whatever the Zephyrians brought next. She would be ready. She had to be. Not just for herself, but for Pip and Steel, and even Grokthul and Whisper. They were all prisoners together, and Amy was starting to realize that working together was their only chance of survival. The Zephyrians thought they were studying specimens in a lab, but Amy was turning their arena into something else. She was turning it into a training ground. She was learning about alien technology and alien psychology. She was figuring out how to lead creatures that had never been led before. She was becoming something the Zephyrians had never expected. She was becoming the most dangerous creature in their arena. Not because she was the strongest or the fastest, but because she was the smartest. And tomorrow she would prove it. Amy woke up to silence. This was wrong. The arena was never completely silent. There were always sounds, the humming of the walls, the breathing of the other creatures, the soft clicking of the Zephyrians watching from above. But now there was nothing. Even the blue light seemed dimmer than usual. Steel was already awake, its red eyes glowing in the darkness. Something is different, it said quietly. The masters have been preparing all night. Amy sat up and looked around. Pip was pressed against her side, shaking. The small creature could sense danger even in its sleep. Grokthel was standing near the center of the arena, sniffing the air. Whisper had all its tentacles spread out, feeling for vibrations. What kind of preparing? Amy asked. They brought new equipment, strange devices. And they have been talking to creatures I have never seen before, creatures that do not click like the Zephyrians. Amy stood up and walked to the center of the arena. She looked up at the viewing area above them. The seats were full of Zephyrian creatures, but there were other beings there too. Some were tall and thin like the Zephyrians, but with different colored skin. Others were completely different, short and round or covered in fur or with too many eyes. They brought guests, Amy said. This is not just a regular observation. This is a show. Steele moved closer to her. The masters want to impress their guests. They want to show them something special. Amy felt a chill run down her spine. Something special meant something dangerous. Something that would test all of them beyond anything they had faced before. The wall opposite them began to glow. It was not the usual blue light. This was different, darker, almost purple. The glow grew brighter and spread across the entire wall. Everyone get ready, Amy said. Whatever comes out of there, we face it together. Grokthel laughed, but was not a happy sound. You still think we can work together against everything? Some things are too dangerous for teamwork. We will see, Amy said. The glowing wall began to dissolve. Behind it was not another room or hallway. It was complete. Darkness, a darkness so deep that Amy could not see anything inside it. But she could feel something watching them from that darkness. The temperature in the arena dropped. Amy could see her breath in the air. Pip started making scared sounds and pressed closer to her legs. Even Steele took a step back. What is that? Whisper asked, its voice shaking. Above them, the alien guests were making excited sounds. They were pointing at the dark opening and talking to each other in languages Amy had never heard before. Something moved in the darkness. Amy could not see what it was, but she could feel it. It was big, it was hungry, and it was looking at them. Void Stalker, Steele said, its voice barely a whisper. They have brought a Void Stalker. What is a Void Stalker? A creature from the space between stars. It feeds on fear and despair. It drives its prey insane before it kills them. I have heard stories, but I never believed they were real. Amy felt her heart beating faster. This was the test the Zephyrians had been planning. They wanted to see how she would react to something truly terrifying. The darkness began to move. It flowed out of the opening like liquid night, spreading across the arena floor. Where it touched the sand turned black. Where it touched the rocks cracked and crumbled. Amy could feel the fear trying to take control of her mind. This was what the Void Stalker wanted. It wanted her to be afraid, to panic, to run around screaming until she was too tired to fight back. But Amy was a soldier. She had been trained to control her fear, to think clearly even when she was terrified. She took a deep breath and forced herself to stay calm. Everyone listen to me, she said. This thing feeds on fear. If we panic, we make it stronger. We have to stay calm and think? How can we stay calm? Pip squeaked. It is so scary. Fear is just a feeling, Amy said. Feelings cannot kill you. Only the creature can kill you. So we focus on the creature, not on the feeling. The darkness had covered half the arena now. From inside it, Amy could see shapes moving. They were not solid shapes. They seemed to shift and change like smoke, but they had eyes. Hundreds of glowing eyes that stared at the prisoners. Grokthul was backing away from the darkness. His usual confidence was gone. "We cannot fight this. We should run." "There is nowhere to run," Steele said. "The arena is sealed. We must face it." Amy looked around quickly. The darkness was spreading, but it was not moving randomly. It was following a pattern just like the plants had. It was avoiding the brightest spots in the arena and moving toward the shadows. "The lights," Amy said. "It does not like bright light. That is why the arena is dimmer today. They dim the lights to make it stronger." She ran to one of the metal rods that had been dropped as a weapon earlier. She picked it up and struck it against a rock. Sparks flew from the metal. The darkness near the sparks pulled back slightly. "Fire!" Amy shouted. "We need fire!" But there was nothing in the arena that would burn. The bones were too old and dry. The rocks would not catch fire. The sand was useless. Amy looked up at the watching aliens. They were leaning forward in their seats, waiting to see what she would do. This was their entertainment. This was their show. The darkness was almost to the center of the arena now. Amy could see the main body of the Void Stalker forming in the deepest part of the darkness. It was huge, at least 12 feet tall, with long arms that ended in claws like knives. Its face was just a mouthful of teeth and two glowing eyes that seemed to look into her soul. Amy felt the fear trying to overwhelm her again, but she also felt something else. She felt angry. These creatures had captured her, killed her crew, and now they were making her fight for their entertainment. They thought she was just an animal to be studied. They were wrong. Amy dropped the metal rod and walked toward the Void Stalker. Behind her, she heard Steele gasp. Pip made a sound like a scream. Even Grokthul told her to stop, but Amy kept walking. She walked right up to the edge of the darkness. The cold was so intense that her skin burned. The fear was so strong that her legs shook, but she did not stop. "You want to feed on fear?" Amy said to the creature. "Then you are going to starve." The Void Stalker looked at her with its glowing eyes. It reached out with one of its long arms, but Amy did not move. She stood perfectly still and stared back at it. "I am not afraid of you," Amy said. "I am afraid of failing my crew. I am afraid of never getting home. I am afraid of letting my friends die." "But I am not afraid of you," the Void Stalker hesitated. This was not what it expected. Its prey always ran or screamed or begged for mercy. They never just stood there and talked to it. Amy took a step forward into the darkness. The cold was so intense that she could barely breathe. But she took another step, then another. "You are just another predator," Amy said. "I have dealt with predators before. The trick is not to act like prey." The Void Stalker reached for her again, but Amy was ready. She grabbed its arm and used its own momentum to throw it off balance. The creature was strong, but it was not used to prey that fought back intelligently. Amy rolled away from the creature's claws and came up with a sharp piece of bone in her hand. She had been carrying it since the first day, waiting for the right moment to use it. The Void Stalker roared and lunged at her. Amy waited until the last second, then stepped aside and drove the bone deep into the creature's side. The creature screamed and pulled back. Black liquid flowed from the wound. Where it hit the sand turned gray and cracked. "But the creature was hurt. It could be hurt. It bleeds." Amy shouted to the others. "It can be killed." Steele was the first to understand. The war beast charged into the darkness and attacked the Void Stalker from behind. Its metal claws left deep cuts in the creature's back. Whisper used its tentacles to grab rocks and throw them at the creature's head. Grokthul overcame his fear and joined the fight, using his strength to pin one of the creature's arms. Pip helped, running between the creature's legs and making it stumble. The Void Stalker was confused. It had never faced prey that worked together like this. It had never been hurt by creatures that should have been paralyzed with fear. Amy coordinated the attack like a military operation. She told Steele where to strike. She told Whisper when to throw rocks. She told Grokthul how to hold the creature, so it could not escape. The fight lasted only a few minutes, but it felt like hours. Finally, the Void Stalker fell to the ground. Its glowing eyes went dark. The darkness that had covered the arena began to fade. The arena was silent again. But this time it was the silence of victory, not fear. Amy stood over the dead creature, breathing hard. She looked up at the watching aliens. They were no longer making excited sounds. They were staring at her in shock. She had done something impossible. She had killed a void stalker. She had led a group of different creatures to victory against something that was supposed to be unbeatable. How? Steele asked. How did you do that? Amy looked at her friends. They were all hurt, but they were alive. They had worked together and won. I remembered something my old captain used to say, Amy said. The most dangerous predator is not the one with the biggest teeth or the strongest claws. It is the one that can think 3 steps ahead of everyone else. Above them, the alien guests were leaving. They had seen enough. They had learned something about humans that they had not expected to learn. Amy sat down on a rock and looked at the dead void. After the void stalker died, everything changed in the arena. The Zephyrians stopped their regular tests. No more plants grew from the walls. No more weapons dropped from the ceiling. The blue lights stayed bright all the time. Amy knew they were planning something big. She could see the aliens in the viewing area talking to each other in urgent voices. They kept pointing at her and making worried clicking sounds. They are afraid of you now, Steele said. They did not expect you to kill the Void Stalker. They thought it was impossible. Amy nodded. She had been thinking about this for 3 days since the fight. The Zephyrians had brought their most dangerous creature to test her, and she had not just survived, she had won. Now they did not know what to do with her. What do you think they will do? Pip asked. The small creature had grown braver since the fight. It no longer hid behind rocks all the time. They will try to get rid of us, Amy said. We have become too dangerous for them to study. They will either kill us or move us somewhere else. Grokthul was sharpening his claws on a rock. Let them try. We have defeated their worst monster. We can defeat anything. Amy looked at the big lizard creature. He was different now, too. Before the fight, he had been a loner who only cared about showing off his strength. Now he listened to Amy and worked with the group. We need to escape before they decide what to do with us, Amy said. If we wait too long, they will separate us or kill us. How can we escape? Whisper asked. The arena is sealed. The walls are too high to climb. The doors are locked. Amy had been thinking about this problem for days. She had studied every inch of the arena. She had watched the patterns of the guards and the schedules of the cleaning crews. She had a plan, but it was dangerous. The waste disposal system, she said. Every day they clean the arena. They suck up the sand and bones and blood through tubes in the floor. Those tubes lead somewhere. Steele looked at the small grates in the arena floor. The tubes are too small. Even Pip could not fit through them. Not the tubes? Amy said. The collection chamber, all the waste goes to one place before it gets processed. If we can get into that chamber, we can find a way to the rest of the ship. But how do we get into the collection chamber? Grokthul asked. Amy smiled. It was not a nice smile. We make them take us there. That night, Amy explained her plan to the others. It was risky and required perfect timing, but it was their only chance. The next morning, the arena cleaning began as usual. Amy watched the patterns carefully. First, the small cleaning robots came out and picked up the larger pieces of debris. Then the suction tubes activated and pulled up the sand and dust. Now, Amy whispered. She lay down on the sand and closed her eyes. Steele, Pip, Grokthul, and Whisper did the same. To the watching Zephyrians, it looked like all the prisoners had suddenly died. The cleaning robots stopped working. Above them, Amy could hear the aliens making excited clicking sounds. They were confused and worried. Their valuable test subjects appeared to be dead. Within minutes, Zephyrian guards came into the arena. They carried devices that scanned the prisoners' bodies. Amy controlled her breathing and heartbeat, making herself seem dead. The others did the same. All dead, one of the guards said. The stress of fighting the Void Stalker must have been too much for them. The masters will not be pleased, another guard said. These were the best specimens we have ever had. The guards activated a platform that lifted the prisoners out of the arena. Amy felt herself being moved, but she kept her eyes closed, and her body still. This was the most dangerous part of the plan. If the guards discovered they were alive, everything would fail. They were taken through many corridors. Amy tried to remember the route, but there were too many turns. Finally, they stopped in a large room that smelled terrible. Amy could hear the sound of machinery and the movement of liquids. Put them in the disposal unit, one of the guards sighed. The processors will break down their bodies. Amy felt herself being placed on a moving belt. The belt carried her forward slowly. She could hear the others being placed nearby. They were all still pretending to be dead when the guards left. Amy opened her eyes. They were in a huge room filled with machines and conveyor belts. The walls were covered with pipes and tubes. The smell was awful, a mixture of chemicals and rotting organic matter. Everyone up, Amy whispered. We do not have much time. The others opened their eyes and sat up. They were on a conveyor belt that was moving toward a large machine with spinning blades. If they had waited much longer, they would have been chopped up for real. Amy jumped off the belt and helped the others down. They were in the ship's waste processing center. Everything that was considered garbage ended up here. Which way? Steele asked. Amy looked around. The room had several exits, but she did not know where they led. She picked the one that seemed to have the most airflow. Fresh air meant a connection to the rest of the ship. They ran through corridors filled with pipes and machinery. Amy could hear alarms starting to go off behind them. The guards had discovered that the prisoners were not really dead. Faster, Amy said. They know we escaped. They came to a junction where 3 corridors met. Amy could hear the sound of Zephyrian voices coming from 2 of the passages. She led the group down the 3rd one. This corridor was different from the others. It had windows that showed the inside of the ship. Amy could see control rooms with aliens working at computers. She could see weapons storage areas. She could see the ship's engine room. The bridge, Amy said, pointing to a large room at the end of the corridor. That is where they control the ship. You want to take over the ship? Grokthal asked. Yes, if we control the ship, we can go anywhere we want. We can go home. They reached the bridge entrance. There were 2 guards standing outside. Amy signaled for the others to wait. She walked up to the guards calmly. Escaped prisoner, one of the guards said, reaching for his weapon. Amy moved faster than the guard expected. She grabbed his weapon and used it to stun both guards. They fell to the ground unconscious. How did you do that so fast? Pip asked. Human reflexes, Amy said. We evolved to be hunters. When we need to be fast, we can be very fast. The bridge door was locked, but Steele's claws could cut through the metal. They broke into the control room where a dozen Zephyrian aliens were working at various stations. The aliens looked up in shock. They had never seen escaped prisoners before. They did not know what to do. Nobody move, Amy said, holding the guard's weapon. I do not want to hurt anyone, but I will if I have to. The aliens backed away from their control stations. Amy could see fear in their large black eyes. They were not fighters. They were scientists and technicians. Steele, watch the door, Amy said. Whisper, make sure none of them try to call for help. Grokthal, help me figure out these controls. Amy looked at the ship's control systems. They were more advanced than anything she had seen on human ships, but the basic principles were the same. Navigation, communication, life support, engines, all ships needed the same things. You cannot operate our ship, one of the aliens said. You are too primitive to understand our technology. Amy looked at the alien. I just killed your void stalker and escaped from your prison. How primitive do you think I am? She found the navigation controls and started studying them. The symbols were strange, but she could see patterns. She had always been good with patterns. Pip, you are small. Can you crawl under that console and see if there are any loose wires? Pip scurried under the console and started examining the ship's systems. The small creature was very good at finding hidden things. There are lots of wires, Pip said, and some of them are connected to the communication system. Can you disconnect them without electrocuting yourself? I think so. Amy heard the sound of more guards coming down the corridor. They had found the unconscious guards and were following the trail. Do it now, Amy said. Cut the communications. Pip bit through several wires with its sharp teeth. The communication panels on the bridge went dark. The ship was now cut off from the rest of the Zephyrian fleet. Steele, how many guards are coming? Many, Steele said. Too many to fight. Amy looked at the engine controls. She found what she was looking for, the emergency systems. Every ship had them. Systems that could be activated in case of catastrophic failure. She pressed a series of buttons. Alarms started going off throughout the ship. Emergency lights began flashing. The artificial gravity fluctuated, making everyone stumble. What did you do? One of the aliens asked. I told your ship that it has a hull breach and is about to explode, Amy said. Now everyone on the ship will be running to the escape pods. Instead of trying to capture us, it worked. Amy could hear the guards in the corridor running away. Throughout the ship she could hear the sounds of panic as the crew abandoned what they thought was a dying vessel. Now we take control of the ship, Amy said. She sat down at the main pilot station and started working with the controls. The systems were complex, but she was learning fast. Set course for Earth, she said to herself. Time to go home. Steele looked at her with its glowing red eyes. You are not the same human who was captured 2 weeks ago. Amy thought about this. Steele was right. She was not the same person. She had been forced to become something new. Something stronger, smarter, more dangerous. No, Amy said. I am not the same.